What if the real reason achieving leaders plateau isn't lack of drive, strategy, or mindset, but hidden survival mode patterns operating beneath the surface? An invisible ceiling exists that most are not aware of. And today's guest, Mitchell Weisburgh, creator of the mind shifting method, a practical brain based system built from neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and leadership strategy, helps leaders rewire their internal operating system so they can lead, decide, and scale without burning out. Welcome to the show today, Mitchell.
Denise, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and I see you've written your name as Mitch. So do you prefer Mitchell or Mitch? I should have asked you this.
You know something, Mitch? My grandparents used to call me Mike because the name Mitch came from my mother's side of the family, and my grandmother said the firstborn son should be named after the father's side, so she refused to call me Mitch.
That's an interesting story. Oh my goodness.
Right.
So tell me, okay, I love that. How did you get started in this field, Mitch?
Well, in terms of mind shifting, before I started with mind shifting, I was advising education publishers on technology and how to introduce technology into schools and how to design it so that it worked for students. And I started that in, I guess, around 2003, 2004. And after, I guess, around 13 or 14 years, one of the things that was going on in my mind is I've been doing this for 13 or 14 years. There definitely is more technology in schools, but I don't see schools making a difference in kids' lives. And the reason anybody gets into education is because you really want to make a difference with kids. You want education to be the thing that propels kids so that they can be successful adults. And I didn't really see that happening. So that's going around in the back of my head. At the same time as I get an email from a university in Niger, of all places, that said that we would like education technology entrepreneurs from the United States to talk to our undergraduates about ed tech in the U.S. And I'm like, I really don't think that ed tech in the U.S. is going to benefit these undergraduates, but you know, I'll bet you that I could teach them how successful people make sense of situations and how that leads to their success. So I wrote back and said, I can teach them about sense making, and and I really don't think that ed tech is going to be particularly beneficial to them. And we went back and forth, and we decided that I would fly out to Niger in 6 months, and I would teach a 2-day workshop twice on sense making. And so that's basically how I got into it, because after we kind of shook hands over Skype or whatever it is that we were using, I'm like, Mitch, how are you going to do this? Like, you've never done this before. So that prompted me to read, I don't know, 11 different books um, different ways people make decisions, economics, military strategy, psychology, neuroscience, cognitive science, and sales, coaching. All these different disciplines had different takes on how people should think about situations or react to failure, but nobody really put it all together. And so I figured I'm going to put it into one body. At the time I called it sense making. Now I call it mind shifting, and wrote a 2-day course for these undergraduates, flew out to Niger, and there were 60, 65, 70 kids in that first 2-day class. And at the end of the 2 days, I'm like, and that's sense making. And they stood up and cheered. And I was like, you know something, this is really my calling, because nobody teaches us that just because we think something is true, that doesn't make it true. Just because we know that we can't do something doesn't mean we can't do it. Just because we disagree with somebody doesn't mean that we're right and they're wrong. And there's techniques that have been, developed over 50, 60, some like 100 years, 100 years of research that allow us to tap into our resourceful parts of our brain, allow us to collaborate with others, but we don't teach that in schools. And they're so necessary to being successful that, those kids were just, they were blown away. The second class was blown away. And slowly since 2018, I've been transitioning from advising organizations on education technology to doing this full time. So this is what I do.
Okay. So what is the common thread about all those decision-making techniques?
So I look at it as 3 different elements. Okay. The first element, I'll just resourcefulness, resilience, and collaboration. So the resourceful part of it is being able to tap into the most resourceful parts of our brain. And and we all get into this fight and flight syndrome, and that's part of our survival brain, which is geared towards keeping the organism alive. And so when we see something based on very little information, that survival part of the brain, the limbic system, activates in like 2/100ths of a second, and it comes up with something to do. But as mammals or as human beings, we have this other part of the brain, in the prefrontal cortex. I call that the resourceful, the sage parts of the brain. Those don't activate in 2 to 3 seconds. And what generally happens by default is our survival parts of the brain comes up with something that we should do. And then our prefrontal cortex, or our resourceful parts of the brain, come up with a justification about why that's right. And if it gets challenged, then all these fear hormones get flooded into our system. It's like, this is a threat, and we go into fight or flight mode. So in the first element, the resourcefulness, is we learn how to calm down those limbic reactions, so that we can then tap into our most resourceful parts of the brain. And that's that first part. And that's that's what the book is about. That's what the courses are about. Then the resilience part is how we react to situations, because our natural way of reacting to situations is, or, they could be problems, they could be opportunities. Something, there's one right answer. I have it, or somebody else has it, or I'm going to learn it. And once I have that, my job is just to do it. And then everything's going to go, all the problems are going to go away. And anybody who opposes me, they're just wrong. And I have to fight against them. Well, right? So if you think about it, how many times does it happen that the first thing that we do,
there's like shutters on there?
Right. Well, and as we do that as individuals, but we do that as a society. Our reaction to COVID, okay, our reactions to violence, so many different reactions. You see all of society acting that way, and so we war against each other. But if we changed our whole focus, and instead of thinking that there's one right answer, if we looked at, well, there's really three other types of situations. One is a situation that really requires either more information or analysis or expertise. And most of those complicated situations, there's more than one thing that's going to work. And there may be trade-offs that we have to face, but learning how to problem solve when it's a complicated situation is very different from learning how to problem solve when there's one right answer. And it's pretty evident. And then there's so many things where it's new and nobody knows the answer. And if we go into those problems with the expectation that there's one right answer, we're going to be missing a lot of possible things that we could do. Or if we go into the situation thinking we're going to find an expert and they're going to tell us what to do, well, experts are people who know more and more about one way of doing something. So experts really aren't the people who should be making the decisions in those complex situations, because the only way complex situations resolve is over time and something evolves. And so in a complex situation, your problem-solving methodology, again, is very different. You have to figure out what different things you could try. And in trying those, how are you going to position yourself to take that information and use it to improve? And if you look at like your customers, okay, small business or maybe large businesses, and you're advising them, most of them, running a business is a complex situation. And if you think you're going to do something and all of a sudden your marketing is just going to work, it's not going to happen, right? You have to understand that you're going to try something. You're going to look at the results. You're going to figure out what you want to change about it. You're going to try something again, and eventually something's going to evolve and it's going to work. You can be there stopping people from doing something stupid. You can be there with the things that generally work, but it's really the interplay of you and your client that's going to come up with what they're going to do in order to be successful. And those are complex situations. So that's the second element is resilience. And the third element is collaboration, because virtually everything that we're going to do around other people. And sometimes those people are going to disagree with us. Sometimes they're going to get in our way. Sometimes they're going to try to hurt us. Sometimes they're going to compete with us. Sometimes we're not going to like them. And the natural ways that we handle those, either they don't work or they don't do anything, or they make the situation worse, or sometimes like rewards and punishments, they may work in the very short term, but over the long term, they really erode engagement and motivation. But there's like 60 years worth of research into ways that we can work with people, even if we dislike them, even if they disagree with them, so that we all can move forward. And so the collaboration section is, how do you set up the way you work with people so that even in those situations where they're opposing you or competing with you, you can find ways that you can move forward anyhow. And those are the three elements.
So it was resilience, collaboration. What was the first one again? Resourcefulness.
Right.
Okay. And you said the resourcefulness comes from the frontal cortex, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Prefrontal cortex.
Prefrontal cortex. Okay. So interestingly enough, as I was training one of the people on my leadership team, they would bring me a problem and I'd say, okay, go find some solutions. And they're like, some solutions? I was like, yeah, I want at least 2, 3 would be better. Because prior to them being promoted, they were very much like, okay, we either rely on me, who almost always had an answer just because I'm the business owner and that's how that works.
Right.
I almost always had an answer, a thought on how something could be done, or they saw one way through it.
Yep.
And it's interesting because their development really took off when they started looking at things like, oh, well, yeah, there might be different ways to get there, and then started evaluating what those changes are. Now they do it on their own.
That was so brilliant. And it most decisions by organizations end up being made by only looking at one possible way. This is the way that we should do it. And yet the data shows that when you consider, 3 or more different possibilities, you do so much better. And when you can get your people, the people that you're working with, to make recommendations like, these are the 3 things that I think that we could possibly do. And when I look at it, I think this is the one that we should try. All of a sudden they feel more empowered, and also the work that they're doing becomes a lot more effective. And you must be a great coach.
I'm sorry?
You must be a great coach.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I try my best. I've had to learn a lot because I used to be the person who thought my way was the best way.
Right.
Yeah. It takes some, I guess, self-discovery to realize that you've got to change things, because my business wouldn't have survived if I hadn't, if I'll be very honest.
Well, also, I think I saw on your website, you have a daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and just looking at you, there were times where you saw your daughter was going to do something and you disagreed with what she was going to do, but you let her do it anyhow.
Yep.
And she learned the law of natural consequences from that. That's what allowed her to grow. And that's another aspect of mind shifting, really, is that, you don't, you don't have to always come up with the one right way. Sometimes it's more important for the person to learn. And the other thing that's surprising, and you probably found this also, is that sometimes you're so sure that they're wrong, but you're letting them do it. And darn, if they don't succeed anyhow, right? They were right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the context that companies will bring you in to work with them for.
So my focus is not on going into companies and helping them out. I'm more than happy if somebody wants to contact me and wants to bounce an idea off me to tell me. But I'm 71 years old. Okay. And it's my belief that people in my generation should be helping the people in the upcoming generations succeed. And I don't have to extract resources from them. I just want them to succeed. And if that's my legacy, or if I know that I've helped somebody become better, that's, that psychically means a lot to me. It's not really a business. It's a passion project.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I
My
did not
goal,
realize that.
my goal is, there's what, 8 billion people on this planet.
Mm.
If somehow or other 5 million people could understand the techniques that they could use to be more resourceful, more resilient, and more collaborative, just think what a difference that would make in the world. That's my goal, is somehow or other, and I don't care if it's from me or if it's from people who learned this from other people or people who learned it from me, people who read my book, people who took whatever, however they learn. If we could get 5 million people who could be resourceful, resilient, and collaborative, we could really start solving so many of the issues that we face, and people would be living happier and more productive lives. That's really what my mission is.
I very much agree. I read something recently that talks about how, that if you have a strong position on something, we'll say politics, we don't have to talk politics, but politics is very polarized, period.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you have this view, then the people on the other side, they're against you. That's how they view it.
Yep.
However, if, and in the same section of reading that I was talking about, they talked about how people, when they came together and, were presented facts, and they were all facts, but they were siloed, these facts and these facts, they tended to divide off into camps, just much like
Yep.
politics do.
Yep.
But when they came together and told the story, all of a sudden they really did start meeting in the middle. And it goes to seek to understand, not be understood. And I think that we need a lot more of this in the world, just like you are saying.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. It's just an interesting tidbit also is that when they take, let's say, groups who are polarized, and before they come together, they have them read something about how other polarized groups learned from people who they disagreed with. And it could be on completely different issues, but just stories about how groups who were polar opposites came together and learned from each other. And then they bring the people together. The conversation has become a lot more collaborative. We can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's mindset, really.
Mindset and some curiosity. It does require some curiosity, which I don't find that people necessarily always possess, at least not naturally.
No, and I think when you're, I'm visualizing this chart that I often use. When you're sure of something, like you're sure you can't do something, or you're sure that you can do something, or you're sure you're right, you have lost the ability of being resourceful, exploratory, empathetic. And it's becoming aware that that's a sign that you're locked into your limbic system and that you have to then calm that down to be able to be curious and maybe even playful. That's a key element of being open and learning how to collaborate and learning how to be resourceful.
The playfulness. Tell me a little more about that.
Well, Piaget, said the business of children is to play, or the work of children is to play. Mammals have evolved to learn through play, because play is a way of trying to do things in a non-threatening environment. So if you can get your mind into a playful mindset, then you're doing things for the purpose of finding out what happens when you do them. You're doing things for the purpose so that you get better, so you could do more of it and you could do it better, not so that you could get some result that, more pay or a promotion or something like that. You're just doing it because you enjoy doing it. And that's a key to long-term learning and success, I think.
It's interesting because I have my team do role playing from time to time.
Right. Perfect. Yeah.
They say they hate it, though.
Right. They hate it. Yep.
They say they hate it.
Right.
It is inevitable, though, that they come out of it going, okay, I get what you were trying to do now.
Yep. Well, it's the same with like diverse teams, okay, where you have whether they're diverse because they're different genders, they're different economic groups, or one's an accountant and one's a salesperson and one's a human resources person. The data shows that when you have a diverse group of people who are working together, they are more effective than a homogenous group of people working together. And yet, when you have a homogenous group rate how well the group performed versus a heterogeneous group rating how well that group performed, the homogenous group inevitably ranks themselves much higher than the heterogeneous group. Isn't
Interesting.
it fascinating? People are
Why is
interesting.
that?
Well, because they're thinking about all the times that they conflicted with people, they argued, but what happens is that through those arguments are very often constructive
Hmm.
because, that's how we come up with something better because I think we should do this. You think we should do that. But if we can really talk, what we're going to find out is there's something that we could do together, which is better than either one of us had thought of. But during that process, we're going to argue. I had a business partner for 10 years. Um, and after 6 months, we needed a consultant to come in twice a month to talk to us because it was just so unpleasant. And, we were both highly moral people and outside of business, but it was so unpleasant arguing about different things. But
Mm.
inevitably, what we came up with was so much better than either of us could have come up with that, on our own. And it took us like 4 or 5 years with this consultant to learn how to, not be so divisive in these fights that we would have, and to, we knew from the beginning that we were better off together than we were apart. But it was not pleasurable for the first couple of years.
That is fascinating because I think most people would have packed it in by that time.
Maybe they would have. Okay, you're probably right. But
Yeah.
I'm stubborn, which isn't. So
It
it's
turned
funny.
out good
Yeah,
in this case,
it turned
though.
out good. No, I'm just remembering. So this goes back like 25 years, where I took my aunt out to dinner one night, and she says, "So, Mitch, let me ask you a question. Do you think you're stubborn?" And I'm like, "Well, you know something. My dad is stubborn. My mom is stubborn. My grandparents are stubborn. Most of my relatives are stubborn. So I guess, yeah, I guess I'm stubborn." And she says, "No, I don't think you're stubborn. You're pig-headed."
Well, clearly your aunt had some opinions.
Yeah, yes, and she's still going at 97.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your book.
So the book is, mind shifting. I'm holding it here, so this is the book. But
Okay.
mind shifting, stop your brain from sabotaging your happiness and success. And that book is based on that first element. So the whole book is based on, how does the brain make decisions? How do you how do you recognize when you're in limbic mode? What are the different things that you can say to yourself? How does the brain trick you to think that you're coming up with decisions rationally when you're not? And then how do you tap into your own resourceful capability? And then I will say, my second book, which should be out in October, is the one based on collaboration. And so that's going to be based on, um, you know, uh, I, how do you, despite the fact that people are opposing you, what are the things that you can do long term? What are the different styles that you can use? What are the ways of questioning people so that you get into a mode where you're collaborating, or you're conflicting constructively rather than conflicting divisively. So those are the two books, and you can the second book isn't out yet, but I also have a newsletter that's free, and people can find all of that on my blog and my website.
Okay. And so what's
Oh,
that website
the
so I
website.
can put it in
Okay.
the show notes as
Yep.
well?
Mindshiftingwithmitch.com.
Okay. Because I want to make sure people can find you.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else I should have asked you before we sign off for the day? I mean, that
Um,
20 minutes went by very
it-
quickly.
well, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you, and I just in talking with you, I can see you just seem to be an excellent coach and a wonderful listener. So I have to say, your customers are very lucky to have you.
Oh,
And
thank you
it
so
was very
much.
pleasant. It was wonderful talking with you, Denise.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that all your information is in show notes so that our listeners can find you. And I'm excited to get your book.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, and thank you. And talk to you at some point.